Hello, I'm JD Dabosky. I'm on the board of directors of the National Association of Flight Instructors, and I'm sitting here today with Robert Morgan, who is an active flight instructor here at the North County Airport and also a member of NAFI. Robert, just to confirm a couple of things, you've been an air traffic controller for 20 years in North Carolina, Fort Myers, and here in Palm Beach.
That's correct.
And you've been a pilot since 1997, so about 25 years experience as a pilot with about 1,200 hours of flying time in your logbook.
Correct.
And you've been a CFI for 3 years. You're an active CFI here at the North County Airport in Palm Beach, and you've been a NAFI member for 2 years.
Correct.
So thank you for all those things.
Yeah.
And yesterday when you were at work in Palm Beach, you were working in the radar room.
Correct.
And it was kind of an exciting event.
Yeah, so
talk us through it.
Okay, so what happened was at the time of this stuff was going down, I was actually on break, and we have a paging system in the building. Usually it's just like, hey, we'll take you back to work or whatever, just general paging going on. Well, this one was, Bobby, we'll take you back immediately.
Okay.
And that was like a true sign of something's really going bad or something really emergency situation. I never thought it would be like what it was.
Do you think the reason they called you was because they knew you were a flight instructor and they knew you were a pilot?
Yeah, so a few of us there are pilots. We actually have a few instructors that work there, maybe like 3. But some of them don't instruct as much as I do or fly as much as I do. So I just happened to be the most convenient one and they thought maybe the most qualified at the time. And I was there and I was supposed to be home that day. I was called in for overtime.
Oh boy.
So
and you earned it.
Yeah. So when I walked into the radar room, they just said there's a pilot in the plane, but he's unconscious. There's 2 passengers on board, and they're flying the plane now. He's over there near Boca at 5,000 feet. We told him to descend to 3,000 feet, and we need you to try to help him land the plane.
So initially, when the plane was talking to air traffic control, they were talking to the Palm Beach approach, or they were talking to Boca?
So the plane departed Marsh Harbor.
Okay.
Climbed up to about 12,000 feet. It's a Cessna Caravan. And at some point...
And okay, just one small point
Sure.
there. It was a Cessna Caravan that was in distress. Have you ever flown a Caravan before?
I've never flown a Caravan.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, so at some point the pilot had said, I don't feel good, I have a headache, and I guess one of the passengers was his friend, and so he was just telling him how he felt, and then within a few seconds or a minute, he just fell over onto the controls, and from what I understand, he wasn't talking to us at that time, he was talking to Miami Center. The plane, with the weight of his body, just pushed the plane down into a nosedive, and it went about 260 knots, about 6,400 feet per minute descent.
Wow.
So they had to get the pilot off the controls, unhook him, and when they did that, it ripped the headset out of the plug-in, and I don't think they knew how to install it back in. So after they got him out of the way and got control of the plane again, which they're not pilots, they just figured it out. They used the co-pilot headset and put that on, and they were Nordo for a little while.
Do you know if one of the passengers was sitting in the co-pilot seat of the Caravan?
I don't know for sure, but it sounds like they were.
Okay.
Because they were friends. The pilot was friend with the person sitting in the co-pilot seat, which I believe he was.
So this occurred. The passenger gets control of the aircraft. They start making radio calls to ATC. Are they talking to Miami Center first when the passenger starts speaking to them?
They should be talking to Miami Center at that point. I believe they were talking to Miami Center. If not, it was somehow they got the Fort Pierce Tower frequency.
Okay.
It might have been like preloaded. They were flying a G1000 type aircraft.
Were they planning on clearing customs at Fort Pierce?
That was their plan.
Okay.
Marsh Harbor to Fort Pierce, and then Fort Pierce, clear customs, go to Lakeland.
Okay. And then when they started speaking to you, you were speaking to them on the Fort Pierce frequency.
Yeah, so what happened was somehow they got in touch with Fort Pierce Tower. They were given a phone number. They said, I didn't get that number, or no call was made. So the Fort Pierce Tower did a lot of heavy lifting, trying to talk the pilot down too. Hey, just maintain wings level. Do you see the shoreline? Yeah, I see the shoreline, but I don't know where I am, because they asked him ident. He couldn't figure out the ident button. Squawk 7700, they couldn't figure that out. So eventually they just had him fly up the shoreline, and then Palm Beach Approach was able to locate him on the shoreline. And there's
Okay.
some of that audio out there. But when I was brought into the room, they said, this is the situation. We have him on the emergency radio on 28.2, so we worked him on Fort Pierce Tower frequency
Yep.
to land at Palm Beach International, which is odd.
Yep.
It's very
well,
odd.
they probably didn't want to take him off of a frequency where they had contact with him.
Correct. And from what I understand, I don't know how it happened, but the main display in front of the passenger was black. So he had no gauges on his screen. I
So
don't
he
know
was looking over at the captain's side.
He was looking at kind of referencing the primary gauges on the bottom, the steam gauges.
Yeah.
And then I
the
think all the way
backups.
to the right if he could.
Yep.
So
Because
I
the
don't know
Caravan
if
has, if it
I
has
think it had
G1000.
3 screens.
Yeah. Then it has the backup or the standby gauges that are down by the throttle quad.
I don't know how that panel went black. I don't know if it's damaged or if it could be turned off.
I don't know. So, okay. When you started talking to the passenger who's now the pilot, did you get a feeling that they could tell you what their airspeed was or what their altitude was or what their heading was, any of those things?
So, I mean, the good thing with our being on radar, we have a lot of that information. So I have ground speed, I have his altitude, and I can kind of his general direction of heading. But he said, hey, I can tell what my altitude is. I knew that. But then when we started thinking, and okay, we do have to get him to land. Does he have any kind of airspeed indication in the plane? And I wasn't super familiar with that plane, but I had a picture that my manager printed out of the cockpit. So I was able to kind of reference that and see the throttle quadrant and kind of coax him or coach him on how to work the throttle just to help slow it down some.
Right.
So eventually the other passenger was I could hear him in the background trying to help the passenger that was flying.
Yep.
And he said, yeah, we do have airspeed. So they must have been looking at the primary gauge in the bottom on the typical G1000 type aircraft.
So do you think that your CFI training or your pilot training or your ATC training really helped out in this situation?
I think everything helped.
Yeah.
It's kind of like pulling all the training together.
Right.
And then also my coworkers and even managers.
So could they listen in on the conversation too?
So the way our emergency radio works, it's just like an old, almost like a cop radio.
Oh, really?
Where you're keying up like this.
Oh, and then it came over
And
speaker.
then it's over a speaker above me.
So everybody else could hear.
It's not the ideal, but in emergency you kind of have to do that. And it's only because we couldn't change his frequency.
So when you were helping him navigate from the Boca area up to the Palm Beach area, did you just tell him to keep the coastline off to the left?
Yeah, so first thing, right when I got in there, I said, hey, can you hear me okay? Yes, I can hear you. Okay, great. What do you see? I said, hey, I have the shoreline off my right, and he was just north of Boca Raton. I said, okay. And my first thought was like, all right, well, the closest airport's Boca.
Right.
However, as it started progressing, I said, well, Boca's not the best option. If as long as he's got control of this plane, I feel like we should bring him to Palm Beach because it's got a bigger runway.
Bigger runway, more hospital care, crash fire rescue.
Everything is right there,
Right.
everything you need.
Right.
So I said, all right, I think we're going to change the plan. We're going to bring you to Palm Beach because we got a bigger runway, more services, and you'll have a better shot at this.
Yep.
And my whole time I was just thinking I got to keep him calm, and he was a very calm guy. He seemed to handle it good.
Were you happy that the Caravan had the gear down already?
Yeah, so I wasn't even thinking about it at first, but 3 weeks prior, the plane had floats on it, and they had just taken them off recently.
Wow.
So luckily for him, and I guess the passenger flying the plane is a friend of the owner of the plane.
Okay.
So that's how he was on board that day.
Maybe he had some experience flying in the plane prior.
He had a lot of rides, but never as the pilot.
Right.
Never acting as the pilot. So
Right.
I think he's seen a lot.
Okay. Any news on the pilot? The one that was
I
incapacitated?
just got some updated news this morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe he might have had some kind of heart attack. They said it was a aorta, like a leaking aorta, and he had some kind of surgery. And they would try to get him up 2 a.m. this morning, and no luck. And then around 9 a.m., 10 a.m. this morning, he actually came to.
Oh, good.
And he says he remembers hearing everything going on, but I guess he was just kind of like, out of it.
Yep. Yeah.
So it sounds like it's possible he can make a recovery.
Yep. there's a lot of pilots that go through hard problems and get back in the air, for sure. Okay. Anything else that you'd like? The whole point of this video is to share it with our NAFI audience. Obviously, you were the right guy in the right place at the right time with your experience, especially your flight instructor experience, especially your pilot experience, to help you. Anything else that you'd like to add that can sort of add a little special sauce to the NAFI briefing that we're going to put this on?
So I think just ever since I got in aviation, I've always had a love for it. Every flight I've learned something, even just not flying, just reading about it or reading the POH and just listening to your mentors. And my ATC background has taught me a lot too, and I got to see both sides of everything. I've had good instructors, bad instructors, but usually they always still teach me something. Even if I don't get along with them, they've always taught me something. But just I feel like all the knowledge, even just reading accident reports and listening to videos on YouTube, Vast Aviation, I've listened to a bunch of those and kind of hear it. Mm-hmm. So I kind of just pulled together all my knowledge and try to just apply it to the situation. And then the flight instruction part of it, just breaking it all down, it might say one way to do it in a book, but that's not always the easiest to explain to students. You just have to kind of break it down really simple.
Even when a student is not even a pilot, right?
Right, correct.
You had to really break it down for them. So we thank you for your NAFI membership. We thank you for your CFI participation. And we thank you for an excellent job done yesterday, Bobby.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
So, good news from South Florida. Everybody survived. And, one more question. Does this remind you of the movie Airplane at all?
Yes, it does.
Take care.